Dead Rising throws a lot of loud psychopaths at you. You got the clown with chainsaws, the snipers in the entrance plaza, the true eye cult near the movie theater, and then you get to Larry. And Larry's different. Larry doesn't see you as a threat or a survivor or even a person. He looks at you and sees inventory. He doesn't talk about customers or victims or even zombies. He talks about meat, fresh meat, rotted meat, more meat. For him, the zombie outbreak isn't the end of the world. It's a supply problem. So who is this guy actually supposed to be? Larry Chiang is the butcher down in Willamette's underground meat processing area, buried under the mall where you don't really go into the stories already deep into the collapse. When Frank finally finds him, Larry already has Carlito hanging there like a side of beef, hooked up right next to the actual animal carcass. The game officially throws him with Adam, Cletus, Joe, and the rest as another psychopath boss, a normal human who snapped when everything went to chaos. But the more you look at him, the less he feels like a guy who broke under pressure, and the more he feels like someone whose whole worldview was already built around killing, hanging, and carving bodies. The outbreak doesn't change him, it just removes the rule about which bodies are allowed on the hook. His arena makes that really obvious once you stop playing it as just a boss fight. You walk into this cold industrial meat room, hooks everywhere, slabs of beef hanging from the ceiling, blood on the floor, big ugly tools, a grinder waiting in the back. Nothing about that space is improvised. Nothing is Larry went crazy and built this. This is his job. This is where he's clocked in for years. The horror you're seeing now is the same layout shoppers were happily walking above while they picked up steaks. And then your eyes hit Carlito. He's not in a chair, not in a cell. He's literally hanging from a meat hook in a line with the animals. There is no special pedestal, no main character framing, just another carcass in the row. Visually the game is saying there is no difference here anymore. Human, cow, pig, terrorist. Once you end up in Larry's world, you are all the same shape. You're a body that weighs something and needs to be processed. For Larry, that's the whole point. A body on a hook is just a product. Once you're really hanging there, it doesn't really matter whether you were a farmer, a soldier, or the guy who bombed the town that caused all of this off screen. Whatever story you had going just got cut away with the close. In his head, meat is the final form of anything that passes through his hands. Before that, you're just walking potential. Frank obviously doesn't see it that way. When you come in as Frank, Carlito is still a person. He's a rival, a guy with answers, someone you're supposed to save or at least hear out before he bleeds out. You can feel the urgency in the way that the scene is shot. Close on Carlito's face, on the hook through his back, on Frank reacting. Larry looks at that exact same scene and you could tell that he is annoyed about is that someone is getting between him and his prime cut. That's baked into how he talks. If you listen to Larry's lines during the fight, he almost never slips into normal human language. It's not you and them, it's meat and more meat. He brags about having the best meat. He gets mad about the meat going bad. When he charges you, it doesn't sound like a god defending himself. It sounds like a butcher who's mad the shop's being messed with and wants to put everything back in order by turning you into stock. That's his whole lens. Hunger and supply. Bodies go in, product comes out. People, zombies, animals. His brain runs them all through the same mental machine. He doesn't stop to wrestle with that he's a cannibal now. There's no moral meltdown about crossing that line. The only wrong that seems to matter to him is the idea of meat being wasted or someone screwing up his workflow. In a mall full of people screaming about survival, Larry's the guy worried that his shelves might end up empty. Zombies make that even more interesting. For most characters, zombies are the mix of tragedy and terror. The dead walking, your loved ones turn into monsters, all that. For Larry, there's something way more mundane. meat that moves. From his perspective, they're almost like spoiled stock that got up off the shelf. They're still bodies, still heavy, still flesh, but they don't behave and they contaminate the good stuff. It feels like less like he's horrified by zombies and more like he's inconvenienced by them. So in Larry's space, the usual categories just collapse. There is no meat line between human and animal anymore. Once you're inside his domain, you're one of the two states. You're a moving body he can turn into meat, or you're already on the hook and he's halfway done. That's it. Your species, your politics, your guilt or innocence, none of that registers as important. It's just, is this usable and how good is the cut? That's what makes him such a good contrast with other psychopaths. Adam wants an audience. Cletus wants control and power. Joe wants total dominance. Cliff is drowning in war trauma and betrayal. Carlito is obsessed with revenge and exposing what happened to Santa Cabeza. Larry's belief system is way simpler and in a way colder. Everything is meat for someone. A cow is meat. A pig is meat. A man is meat. Cannibalism for him isn't falling off a cliff, but it is taking one step sideways. Same hooks, same knives, same grinder. The wrongness is just a social rule he never really cared about. And in a game that's already screaming about consumerism, zombies shuffling through a mall, survivors literally killing each other over food and stuff, Larry is kind of the punchline. The mall is a machine designed to turn resources into products and products into profit. Larry is the guy at the very end of that machine, doing the ugliest part of the job. Where Carlito looks at Willamette and sees victims of American greed, Larry is the worker inside that system, turning beings into goods because that's what he hears to do. And then there's also this awkward real-world side of how Capcom originally chose to present him. In the 2006 version, Larry's a heavy-set Chinese butcher with exaggerated features, an accent, and even the Chinese character for meat tattooed on his neck. A lot of people have pointed out that he doesn't just read as a messed up butcher, he reads like a racist caricature. The scary foreign butcher who feeds you something you shouldn't be eating. It's that the game hooks the horror onto a very specific stereotype image. The remaster clearly tries to walk that back. In Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, Larry gets reworked visually into a more generic but still terrifying butcher. Still big and still bloody, still monstrous, but less tied to one ethnicity and that old meat branding carved into his skin. They keep the important story, and it beats him having Carlito on the hook, the cannibal angle, the meat-obsessed dialogue, but strip out a lot of the visual coding that made him feel like he was scapegoating an entire group. That change doesn't really soften his worldview though, it just changes how we're invited to look at him. 2006 Larry is about meat and about being the other. Remaster Larry is much more purely about the role he plays inside the consumerist nightmare. The guy who looks at everything that moves and thinks, how many servants is that? The core horror is that he sees people as the product that is still there, just not wrapped in the same caricature. If you put all of this together, Larry becomes one of the clearest expressions of what Dead Rising is trying to say. He doesn't see people and animals. He sees bodies and product. In his mind, meat is the natural final state of anything that's alive. The outbreak just speeds up that process and adds new options to that list, where Carlito sees victims chewed up by American consumerism. Larry is the endpoint of that process, a worker whose entire purpose is to turn beings into consumable goods, no questions asked. So when you walk into that meat room, you're not just walking into the creepy boss arena, but you're also stepping inside the part of the mall that was always there, doing the ugliest work in the background. The only difference is now that as far as Larry's concerned, you finally belong on the hook too. And I'm honestly curious, after looking at him this way, is Larry just another Dead Rising boss to you? Or is he one of the scariest mirrors the game holds up? where would you put him in your own psychopath ranking? Tell me in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And I hope everybody's doing pretty good. And I wish everybody a great day. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out. Stay locked in.
In a moment, you can try the best ground meat you've ever tasted.
Whoa, ground? Wait a minute, listen. I had something else in mind.
Zombies are no good. I can't serve my customers spoiled meat like that. I have a reputation to uphold. Trust me, I'm a butcher. I've got the best meat in town.